What a wild Friday night. What an unforgettable Saturday from start to finish. For those of you who are tuning in right now, there's so many things that happened this weekend. For me and Avery, we're going to quickly talk about 5 games. And the first one that I'm going to go with, it's all about the youth. It's all about the youth, which happened on Friday
Uh,
night. Um, wow. He's talking about to kick off the ACC rivalry, Virginia Tech, Miami Hurricanes. Both teams even met at the middle of the field before the game, talking smack. And for that game to deliver the way it delivered, especially that fourth quarter, no disrespect to Tyler Van Dyke, he would have not risen to the occasion the way Cam Ward did. He didn't have a great game, but yeah, that man redeemed himself when it mattered most. Take it from there.
you're right. In order to start a weekend for college football, why not on Friday night in Miami? And you're talking about two schools, great history on both. Virginia Tech in the past few years, things away from football have kind of clouded the school a bit. But Virginia Tech has always been this school that likes to play spoiler a bit. So right out of the gate, when they come in with the turnover from Cam Ward, all of a sudden Virginia Tech is looking to have that momentum to start. And from there, it was kind of a seesaw for the rest of the night. And let me tell you, anybody who was at that game at Hard Rock Stadium saw a game. This was not only a test for Virginia Tech, but it was a test for the Miami Hurricanes. And let me tell you, that was a game. That was a game. I was at work in the break room. People kept coming in because the game was on TV. So, some people wanted to see how this game turned out. And this was a wild game. What a game to start college football going into the weekend on a Friday night, how that game ended, you know, is he in? Did he catch it? Did he not catch it? I mean, it is what it is, but that Friday night game leading into Saturday, and and the Miami Hurricanes need to look at this game for 2 points. One, Cam Ward needs to pay attention for his reads. He needs to not, force the ball, not to create any interceptions. The second thing, Miami's defense. Miami's defense did a very good job, but they did a very good job in the second half. And they need to play a complete game. Overall, you know, hats off for both teams because that was a wild game for a wild Friday night.
Yes, indeed. They survived a Hail Mary scare at the end. Um, and Miami, for the first time in their program history, in their school history, they improved to 5-0 by the end of September. So congratulations to my Hurricanes. I'm very happy for them. Cam Ward, as we know, he's a Heisman Trophy candidate. And when you put the highlights, you got to put those two plays that he did in the fourth quarter, especially the second one where he was about to get sacked and he tossed it to tight end Riley Williams for a 26-yard gain. That was just incredible. His IQ is on a whole different level. But we're moving on to the second one. And this one also lived up to the hype. Georgia, Alabama. We started with my Hurricanes, and now we go to your Alabama Crimson side. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. It looked ugly at first in the first half. Carson Beck had an awful first half, but just like Cam Ward, but he did not pick up the W. He redeemed himself. He stayed poised, And you gotta respect Georgia's championship DNA for never giving up. To come back to make it interesting, 28 to zip against an Alabama team. But that game was just unreal.
Not only was that game unreal, I mean, as an Alabama fan, I'm watching it and thinking, oh, this is man, ooh, we can just go ahead and play this game all the way to the end. And I think that was Alabama's mistake. There are 4 quarters in a game, gentlemen. You need to play 4 quarters. Alabama played like 1.5 and then decided to play another game in the fourth quarter. But I agree with you, Carson Beck. He held in it, even though those 3 interceptions were kind of what started the issue with Georgia being down. But 3 touchdowns to make it interesting and to make it interesting. Jalen Monroe, he did it. He did the same thing. He did it on the air. He did have a touchdown. He also had 2 himself. So not only was he trying to pass the ball around to his receivers, but if need be, he was doing it himself. That game being played late September, SEC game, I mean, you're talking, a rematch of the SEC championship, which is probably one of the best SEC championship games. And now you're going to do conference play, on a Saturday night. Man, it was a great game. It was a great game for both teams. I have to give it to Georgia. Like you said, there was no quit in them. There was no quit. Even being 28 down, they kept going, and that's how it works, little by little. They nearly made the 28-3 score, a memory. But again, Alabama pulled it out. But the main thing for Georgia, Carson Beck, hey, cut down those interceptions, but all in all, he kept a cool head, chipped away at the lead, nearly came out with the win. For Alabama, you need to play a complete game, especially on the defensive side. That was tough to watch. That was tough to watch. So going to work next week, it'll be fine. People won't be looking at me as like, hey, what happened with Alabama? But for my Georgia fans, I can say, hey, great game. I'm not one to uh, uh to, to always say, hey, we won, look what we did. I'm all about sportsmanship, even as a fan. Georgia played a great game. Alabama just barely won, but it overall great game on both sides. I do have to give it to the Bulldogs for not giving up. Alabama, 4 quarters, gentlemen. There are 4 quarters in a game. Play 4 quarters. Play the 60 minutes. Be great.
This is why we love college football. When we're talking about classic matchups like Georgia and Alabama, lives up to the hype. It was just beautiful, beautiful. And we have some stunners, as always, in college football. And this one, it made my head scratch. It should have never happened, but it happened. Arizona stunned Utah 23-10. This Utah team was absolutely horrendous at the red zone. They were horrendous at the red zone. They couldn't convert in 4 downs. This team should have had way more points up on board. Whether Cam Rising was there or not, they should have had more points. And speaking of Cam Rising, he's been out for the 3rd straight week, as we know, because he's hurt, he's injured. Wilson, he threw 2 interceptions that went 20 for 40. But Arizona didn't play their best either, but they did just enough to win. But I feel this is more of Utah not maximizing and capitalizing their opportunities more than Arizona shutting them down. But that's it. There's nothing we can do. They had to learn from this, but this was um, a very disappointing loss for Utah.
I agree with you, especially because it was a loss at home. I've kind of said this with college football, playing at home is a big deal. Granted, you have teams that travel and students that travel with the team, but sometimes, these home games make a big difference. Now, the Arizona Utah game, not a lot of, real estate between both schools, so it could have been easily, a half and half as far as the game. But Utah playing at home just had nothing. And the score doesn't dictate, the play of Utah and the play of Arizona. Arizona was almost like getting by, but they got enough that they put up 23 points. But Utah, you're exactly correct. When you're only going, 50-50 on your completions, what are you going to do? But Arizona needs to kind of take this and say, okay, we upset a 10 seed team, but how can we make this better? Because we're still going to have these other teams that are, more dominant on the offensive side of the ball or dominant on the defensive side of the ball. And the Arizona Wildcats need to figure out a way to make this work to once they go into more in depth of the season and play these other teams that can easily overshadow what Utah didn't do. But I mean, Arizona's has got to take, they won. It's not so much, oh, no, Arizona played better football than Utah. And doing that on the road, they need to pat themselves on the back because you're right. This is absolutely a head scratcher for me because I thought Utah would take this, at least by 20.
Another one, Kentucky takes down Ole Miss. Ole Miss, they had a chance to tie the game. Hayden Davis missed a 48-yard field goal. Ole Miss head coach, I don't like saying this, but he got outcoached. He got outcoached in this game. Ole Miss, in my opinion, they're the better team, and they dropped the ball in this game. Go ahead.
I agree with you. I agree with you 100%. And this is another team that lost at home. And one, when you're missing your kicks, I've said it before, teams, hug your kickers, give them some words of affirmation, because that looked like a chip shot to him and it just went right left. And you're right. Coach Lane Kiffin, I think, did get outcoached because you're talking about a Kentucky team the previous weeks nearly beat Georgia. So if you're playing a team that nearly beat a number one team, I don't think you were doing your homework, Coach Kiffin. I don't think you were doing your homework because Kentucky absolutely, they went in and they were like, hey, we're going to beat you. It may not be pretty, but we're going to do the best we can. We nearly had Georgia, and granted, nearly isn't a win, but we're going to let you know what we can do. And by doing it, we're beating you at home. And you're absolutely correct. Lane Kiffin absolutely did get outcoached. I think, again, this is another one where the score doesn't dictate it much. I think if you would have doubled up the score, it would made more sense because both teams are very offensive uh uh depth teams. Like I thought this score would be more like a 30-27 score. But hey, thumbs up to Kentucky because I mentioned this to someone last week. I'm like, give Lane Kiffin a couple more years. He's gonna have a good team out of Ole Miss. Now he's kind of has to go back to the drawing board, you know, by getting upset. And another thing, you're getting upset for a conference. This is a conference game. You're supposed to win these, you know, and granted, other conference schools want to take down, the other top tier schools. But when it comes to conference play, you know what needs to be done.
Yes, indeed. Last but not least, Northern Illinois, NC State. Northern Illinois, so far this season, they've been impressive. One would argue that last week they could have won that game. So you're talking about a team that could have had a 3-0 start. And even in this game against East State, they played well. For the second game in a row, Northern Illinois, they held their opponent to less than 200 yards. The Wolfpacks just went 1 of 11 on third down. So, but they did enough to win this game. They won 24-17. And but from what I'm seeing so far from Northern Illinois and the type of coach that they have, I'm impressed through 4 games. I'm impressed so far. So, but if you're NC State, this is not a victory that you should be smiling or cheering because you have to clean up a lot of things. And if you're Northern Illinois, you have to execute on certain plays the right way because I felt that they were the more aggressive team, I should say, but they didn't win. So, but they have to go back to the drawing board and see what they need to fix.
I agree with you. In the past couple weeks, we all witnessed it, them going to South Bend and beating Notre Dame kind of gave them that drive. It put them in a ranking position, even though it didn't last. But there's something about this Northern Illinois team, and we've kind of said this, when it comes to your underdogs, you want to latch on to it. There's something about this team that I want to follow, not just their head coach, but the team in general. He has a very good group of young men that are diligent, that are straightforward. They just need something else to help them get them over the hump instead of just, sort of winning. You kind of need these more of decisive wins, and nearly taking it to the Wolfpack of NC State was nearly that. But I think Northern Illinois has something looking at their schedule, especially in the next couple of weeks. They're going to play Massachusetts. They're going to play Bowling Green. These are schools. Bowling Green nearly took it to Penn State. So I think this is something that Northern Illinois can look back, look at the game plan, saw what works, saw what didn't work, and then maybe take this into something that can give them an edge that can catapult them to a bowl game per se, because we're only a third of the way there. As far as NC State, I mean, you're looking at an ACC stacked right now that it can go either way. When these ACC teams start playing each other, it's going to be crazy. It's going to be crazy. So don't be surprised, when you have NC State, knocking off another ACC school just to, kind of keep in the conversation. I see them, if the next couple weeks, if they win their games, possibly jumping into the top 25. But for both teams, it's kind of one of those, it was just a good game on both sides. Like anything, you kind of hate that a team won, but both teams played a great game. NC State, just played a little bit better to take the win. But I look for both teams to, to be kind of not major players, but to kind of get heads turning in the next couple weeks as we go into October.